Welcome to Authentic Podcast number 2. I'm Scott Austin, CEO of Authentic Artists. I'm joined once again by Bob Bradley, head of marketing here at Authentic, and I just finished a Coke in a bottle.
How good was it?
You know, Coke and beer in a bottle, there's nothing better. The can does not do it justice. Maybe on tap for a nice Guinness if you're in Dublin. Other than that, Coke in a bottle is the way to go.
I agree.
So I saw This Is It this weekend. A lot of buzz on this movie. I went in fairly skeptical only because I'm probably one of the biggest Michael Jackson fans alive. And I was pleasantly surprised at not only how unsappy and unschmaltzy, if that's a word, that they made it. You know, I was really impressed with the fact that they just captured the moment, the last moments of Michael Jackson's life. And I think that it could have gone so many different ways. They could have done so many things differently for dramatic effect or sentiment. And it was really nice to see someone captured for who they truly are. And I think that, you know, one of the conversations we're going to have today is about DIY marketing. And I think we should talk about that, about the idea that artists should allow themselves to be themselves, to not play everything up all the time.
Right, and at the same time, you want to kind of focus on your image, and especially for emerging artists, which Authentic focuses on, it's important that you portray yourself in a certain light. Image is everything, first impressions are everything. And when you're getting your career going as an artist, it's important, you know, whether it's online or offline, to come off a certain way, and people will, they always judge. You know, when they're checking out a new band, of course, the music has to be amazing, but they're also going to look at the whole package.
Let's talk about that a little more, though. Don't you think that in today's market, where you have so many more bands, every band is capable of making great records, shooting great photos, making cool videos, really for pennies. Hasn't it changed a little bit about how seriously bands need to take themselves? I remember a few years ago, it's like, oh, well, I don't want to be, you know, viewed in this way, or I don't want this crowd to misinterpret my indie cred factor. And I just feel like everything's kind of changed. You've got really, really quote-unquote cool bands doing very commercial things.
Years ago, whether it's 5-10 years ago, it would be taboo for a band to do anything that remotely looked like it was commercial or working with a brand, whether it's MTV or Coke. You know, you wanted to stay away from that, whether you're an indie band, a hard rock band, a pop band, that was on the rise. But now you kind of have to go with that in order to keep up with all of these other bands that are trying to compete for your attention.
And hopefully you get Coke in a bottle if you work with Coke, because that's the phrase of the day.
Yeah, I mean, that only comes with it.
Well, you know, it's interesting because I've had many conversations over the past couple of years where maybe an artist feels that they have to be embraced by, you know, a more credible audience before they can go pop. And I think for certain artists that makes sense. I do think, though, that with this kind of leveling of the playing field, if you will, that as hard as it is to make money in music, I don't know how many people you know that are full-time musicians that make a living. I don't know many. You really do have to look at all avenues for promoting your brand, whether it's advertising, selling CDs at shows, or your merchandise, which is, again, an extension of branding, really. But really looking, like you said, to these sponsors they not really throwing money at bands as much as they were, unless you have a really big following, but they are interested in supplying you with product if they think that your brand and their brand have similar target audiences.
Right, and it's definitely a world where people are loyal to certain brands, certain imagery. Whether it's a great pop band that's on Warped Tour, people are gravitating towards something that's familiar, whether it's their favorite drink like Coca-Cola or a great rock band that dresses a certain way. And it's really a fine line between, you know, trying too hard to be like everybody else or not trying at all. And you got to balance yourself and cater to the audience, you know, not sell out per se, but go with it and then branch out from there and create your own image and your own thing.
Our good friend Clark Stiles just sent me a DVD from his band, The Good Listeners. It's a documentary movie that they shot. Really interesting story. They basically, after having been in the music business for 20 years, having had the major label record deal and the impending doom that came along with that about 10 years ago, they decided to keep making music. And through heartache, heartbreak, tough times, and everything else, they're, you know, now in their late 30s, and they're still recording, and they're making amazing music. And instead of focusing on the pipe dream of getting on the radio and becoming a big superstar, they decided to make really cool music. They got in an RV and they traveled across the country, and they basically hooked up with local musicians in these, you know, podunk towns across the country and made some amazing music. And the visual that corresponds with it, it really, I was watching this DVD and it just really touched me. It made me remember why I'm in this business, why we're all in this business, because we're pursuing being a fan of, or being in business with, or being an artist of great art. And it's so hard to find people that really get it. And unfortunately, I think most musicians don't get it till after they've gone through all the different stages of wanting a big record deal, getting a big record deal, probably not having huge success, being very bitter, and then most of them go into some other occupation. These guys have been in the business for so long, but they've stuck with it, and now they've found a really cool new vehicle to get people to discover their music, which is now this documentary film. Bob, I know you saw a few minutes of it. We were watching about a half an hour of it together. You know, what do you think about that kind of approach?
I think it's genius, and for an artist to come up with an idea like that, it doesn't seem like it's prefabricated to, you know, just be a gimmick. This is like a real band that has, you know, a great image and plays great music, and people will, you know, recognize that. They'll see that and they'll want to learn more about the band and check out their music.
Really what we're talking about is just looking at things from a totally different perspective, not being stuck on or hung up on or wishing or hoping for the way things maybe used to be, or the way that bands used to get discovered or break. And, you know, again, there's a lot of bands trying a lot of different approaches. I know that this conversation is kind of an extension of last week's conversation, DIY marketing. I would say that making a documentary movie where you travel across the country recording songs in random places with random people is about as DIY marketing as you can get.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's really about the whole package. How you take everything that you do within your career, you tie it up and you present it to people. And this movie is a great example. It's a great tool for an artist to use, along with everything else that we were touching base on before. You know, bands need to think about these kind of things and implement them. Try it out and see what happens. And if that doesn't work, try something else. When someone goes to a band's MySpace page, you know, sometimes they overdo it. Sometimes it's too much.
Do they? I don't. Yeah, the MySpace page that doesn't ever load and crashes my Safari every time I go to it because it's got all kinds of bling.
Yeah, I mean,
you know, look, we've all been guilty of, I think, over embellishing and putting too much importance on how something looks, or as an A&R guy, I can tell you I put way too much emphasis on how something sounded. It's like almost like the sonic quality was somehow more important than the song underneath, which is, you know, it's just a classic flaw of an A&R person. But I think that, you know, it is important to have an image that is going to be received by your potential audience, and knowing who your audience is certainly a big part of that. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to spend $50,000 on, you know, a wardrobe, a photo shoot, crazy locations, doing stuff that's totally, you know, nutso. It's I think it's much more about capturing the essence of who the artist is. I think the bands, for the most part, they're kind of on one side or the other. They either try really hard and it comes off really cheesy, or they don't try at all and it looks bad. And I think that one thing to look at is making, within a very, as simple as you can, making something as great as it can be.
So it really is easy. As an emerging artist, you're coming up in the scene, you're playing shows, you are inspired by what you are surrounded with, your lifestyle, your culture. Music is a lifestyle. The bands that you idolize will, you know, in turn, make you dress a certain way, make you play a certain kind of music. I used to be a musician in a touring act, and I wanted to be like the acts that I liked. And I've always been into business, and I knew at a certain point I had to change it up just a little bit, or I wouldn't be around the next year. You know, people go through fads and changes, and they get into certain styles and new artists, and it's about keeping up and staying relevant but at the same time being yourself.
That's exactly right. And I think that the problem is that it's very easy in our, quick moving pop culture to get caught up in the trend of the moment and the fad of the moment, because that's what your audience likes, that's what they do, and injecting just enough of your own personality into things to get your audience to respect you as an original artist.
Someone that pops into my head immediately is Madonna. She's huge. She's been around since the 80s, sold a few records. But each time that she puts out a record, she stays hip and relevant, in touch with what people want. Whether it's a certain style, just like I was talking about before, but you can still tell that's her. Like the way she sings, the music really just encapsulates who she is. But it's hip enough that where people that are younger could get into her. And I think as an artist, you have to really understand your audience, what they want, but at the same time just be yourself and write the music that you've grown up to play.
And, with Madonna, great example. I grew up with her music. I was fortunate enough to end up working for her company for 5 years as an executive. And, I think that what made Madonna such a trailblazer was that she was making pop music. She was making music that was very accessible to a large audience. But again, talking about injecting your own identity into something, she made it her own. She's not the greatest singer on the planet. I don't think I'm insulting her by saying that. I don't think anyone thinks she's the greatest singer on the planet, but it was this incredible combination of elements of her unique character, her strong personality, her sexual overtones, combined, by the way, with great songs, which is what it always comes down to. You can be the freakiest motherfucker on the planet. If you don't have great songs, it's going to be very hard for you to develop, maintain over a long period of time a loyal following.
And I agree. And, there's a difference between taking what's hot at the moment and trying to be that, and injecting yourself into what's hot in the moment. And that way you have that respect and you can keep going.
Okay, so clearly I think we're making our point here that there's a fine line between being original and embracing pop culture. One of the other things that comes up all the time with bands that we talk to is bands feel like they need a booking agent, that the booking agent is what's separating them from being successful or not. And unfortunately, most artists out there, most artists maybe even listening to this podcast, don't deserve a booking agent. And I don't say that condescendingly or negatively. On a business level, which is what booking agents are, they're business representatives, they need to look at a business, a brand, an artist, and go, okay, I'm going to sell X number of tickets in X number of cities, which is worth X commission, and it's worth my time to be a part of this. I think that most bands that have never played a show, that are sitting in their, their bedroom or their basement making records, they think their music is good enough that should substantiate a booking agent getting involved. Clearly, we've been around, we've seen this story, seen this movie 1,000 times. How do you think, as a former musician and as someone who did get in the van and just go, something I'm a big proponent of, what are some of the things bands can do to kind of get the party started, to use your term, on the touring front?
Artists have to have that game plan. They have to establish who they are, like we were saying before, write great music, of course, get it out there, whatever way. If you're on a label, if you're doing it yourself, you have to make yourself worth the agent's time. And by building an audience, whether you're getting in the van and going all across the country, at least building a huge regional following of people that will buy tickets, come to your shows, and be loyal, then you're going to get their attention. And then you reach out and say, hey, I'm doing this and this. I have a proven history of selling out these kind of venues. Then they'll be like, okay, cool. This is worth my time, because their time is valuable. They can't just pick up an artist out of the blue that has no proven track record. Maybe 10 years ago, when more politics were involved, and yes, politics are involved in the music industry. That's just how it is. But they can't take those risks anymore. It's proven. We see this every day. And booking agents are looking for quality artists that are working hard, that have proven that they can draw X amount of people at mid to larger size venues.
Okay, so why are we talking about booking? Why are we talking about getting yourself on the road? Because I believe that it's all part of DIY marketing. I mean, marketing in and of itself is presenting a brand to a prospective audience, a prospective clientele or consumer. And the way to do that in music is to get out and play for people.
Most artists want to tour. They want to get out and they want to tour the world, do everything that a rock star would do. I was blessed with the chance to tour all over the world and play for a lot of people. A lot of people don't want to do that. Some people want to stay home, do a project, and marketing is applicable in different ways. But if you want to be a touring artist and get out there and do your thing and play for a lot of people, you have to earn it. You have to work hard for it, and the booking agent will come in time if, you know, all the cards play out the right way.
Let's talk about video content for a second. At Authentik, we put a pretty heavy emphasis on creating new video content constantly, whether it's video blogs, music videos, videos from live performances. What do you think are some of the things that, you know, our audience, our listeners should be focused on in the video world?
There's a few different things that artists can do, especially out the gate if they're an emerging artist, to generate attention, which is pretty much half of marketing these days. You know, you have the online territory, having your Facebook and MySpace, Twitter, blah, blah, blah. You know, you need good video content. There is no question about it. You know, a great music video would be nice. Some people can't afford it, but there's a lot of students out there that could help you out with that. Doing acoustic videos of your performances, live performances, video blogging, all of that stuff is can be propagated into the online space, and people could discover you that way as well, using YouTube, Vimeo, using the video player on Facebook and MySpace. Create as much quality content. You know, don't create crap. There's a lot of stuff that's just floating around that they'll watch the first few seconds, and if it looks bad, they'll turn it off and they'll never check you out again. You're
touching on an excellent point. It actually ties in perfectly with what we talked about at the beginning of the pod with imaging. You can have a lot of things that aren't very good, and it's bad food in small portions, is, you know, it's my favorite term. It's like, okay, great, there's all this stuff, but none of it's really interesting or very good. I would much rather see an artist come up with a few pieces of content, visuals, video, photos, and, you know, maybe some special bonus tracks or something, but that are quality. It doesn't help you to put things out into the world, out into the universe, because we're so inundated with content all day long. The last thing we want is to be bothered with something that sucks. We want something that's great, that's fresh, that's unique. OK Go did it with their music video, the treadmills and doing all this crazy shit. That was cool. That basically put that band on the map in a big way. They were a big band in Chicago. I was at Capitol Records when we signed them. I remember the numerous conversations about, should we drop them because they haven't sold enough records on a commercial level to make it make sense? And then they hit it out of the park with a video that cost them, you know, $25 and a six-pack of Budweiser, right? It was a great idea. And great ideas are what makes one band succeed and other bands fall by the wayside.
Yeah, and with an emerging artist, you don't have to spend a lot of money. You have to spend time coming up with great ideas, and your fans will gravitate towards that. If you make a cool viral video, I heard about this one band, I can't think of the name, but they did a music video where they followed around celebrities, and they would just go by these celebrities, TMZ style, and lip the words to the song. And whether it's Kim Kardashian or any of those big TMZ, Perez Hilton focused celebrities, and they just transformed it into this great viral video, and it got a lot of views online, and that could create a buzz for an artist that's on the rise.
Okay, a lot of topics today. Authentik podcast number 2. Bob, you're on your way to a film and TV mixer tonight.
I am.
And if anyone has a time machine and they can go back in time and meet Bob tonight, tell us where you're going and why you're going there.
I'm going to a club called Bardo, and it's a pretty hip place, I hear. And it's a film and TV mixer, RSVP only. So if you can go back in time, RSVP, meet me at the bar, buy me a Jack and Coke, and we're good to go.
Well, you're a cheap date. Make sure the Coke comes out of a bottle. I'm Scott Austin, Bob Bradley, Authentik podcast number 2. Stay tuned for some interesting topics next week. Authentik podcast number 3. It's going to be sexy.